And we're recording. Hi, Thea.
Hello there.
So we're going to try to make this another quickie. And I'll lead right into where we're going, I think. I was telling you before we started recording that my son a couple of days ago had asked for some advice. And the advice was at our homeschool park day, we have a variety of ages. And it was a new member park day too. So we had even more new people, new kids. There were a lot of youngers. And when I say youngers, I mean even younger than school age. So 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And he asked me, he said that he and one of his other homeschool buddies, they're both about 11, were playing one-on-one basketball. And they were playing with my son's ball. And his friend's ball was to the side. And this little girl, this 4-year-old, came over and she wanted to play with the ball and shoot baskets, join in with them. And they tried to, I think, redirect her, which didn't work too well. And it sounds like in the end, she grabbed the ball and was shooting hoops, trying to shoot hoops right in the midst of them playing, right? So what to do, how to manage that? And I said, well, if your friend is okay with her playing with his ball, the thing to do is to say, if you bring your mom or dad, whomever is there with you at the park, over to supervise you, you can then go play at the other basket with this ball. We'll allow you to do that. But we want someone watching you so you don't get hurt. And it led to a discussion about boundaries and about the fact that what I find is that we are often helping people, children, reminding them that there are boundaries, that we are helping children establish boundaries, and really, ultimately, we are helping parents be parents. I find a lot these days. And because I explained to my son, the parents should have been there. The parents should have been aware of where their 4-year-old was. If the 4-year-old is not capable of recognizing that there is something going on here that they need to respect and not intrude upon, the parent needs to be there. And the parent wasn't there, right?
Right. And can I jump in here?
Yeah, please.
And then there's that part where the 11-year-old boys have that opportunity to say, hey, we see you want to play, but we've got a game going on, so you can sit and watch for a little while because we don't want to knock you over because we might be getting a little rough, you know. So there's that teaching moment that comes for those young children to teach a younger, and that's part of that village picture too, you know. If the parent isn't available or isn't around, because that's what they would do if it was their younger sibling, right? It would be like, no, sorry, you can't play. We're already playing and we don't want to have to totally alter our experience right now. And then there are those times where, I mean, in terms of those kind of social dynamics where, you know, my boys ranging 8 years, you know, they would go down to the park and shoot hoops, and then other kids in the neighborhood would join in. And there is something that's just so beautiful about that ability to play safely with those varying degrees, which we've talked about in various conversations about the youngest being the oldest sometimes, the oldest being the, you know, the different roles they get to inhabit.
Right.
And then I can recall in the early days of my eldest, when I had time to spend at the park at that time, those experiences of meeting other children and parents and those social things, that's a learning sphere right there for new parents. And I remember sensing that, like, nobody really knows what the rules are. There aren't any rules here. And how do we find our way and shape and hold this for our children, right? Because there'd be some people who would bring toys. There'd be some people here. And so are we expecting them all to share? What works out here?
Mm-hmm.
And then there is that step as a parent where one comes into, these are my rules, and this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And then that lets the kids know where they are too,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Yeah.
other parents, as long as people are civil and courteous with one another, everyone can know where everyone is and can respect those spaces.
Right.
But that doesn't happen until someone steps up and says, hey, this really isn't appropriate for you right now.
Right.
4-year-old, dear sweet child, you can come sit over here and watch.
Right.
You know,
right.
But no one knows until someone says something.
Right.
So.
And what we've talked about, like you're saying here, and we talked about in the past, is that there's an extreme lack, I think, of parents knowing to step up and say that. And so what you and I have talked about throughout many of our talks, we've talked about resilience, we've talked about autonomy, we have talked about boundaries, spatial dynamics, spatial relationships, respect, begetting resilience, right? Mm-hmm. And it comes down to what we were talking about earlier this morning is claiming your authority. Yeah. This needs to be worked on. Mm-hmm. People need to be empowered to reclaim or claim their authority as grown-ups, their authority as parents, their authority as people, as empowered individuals. Yes.
Individuals, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, claiming one's authority as an individual.
Yes.
And we were just talking about that a little bit in terms of the reclaiming of that authority of the individual throughout our broader culture and society. We see that as a trend of lack of real authority figures, you know, standing tall. And I'm sorry, I kind of got a little sidetracked, but also that's what's necessary for true relationship, right? Because that's self-responsibility.
Yes. To
really claim my authority in my life, in my sphere, that comes from me being responsible for myself, recognizing what I'm responsible for and who I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
And
trusting one's compass, I think.
Yes.
And what we talked about a little bit is that, I mean, again, I am 48 going on 49. You know, we're both in our 40s. How old are you?
I'll be 43 this month.
Right. So it has taken me certainly to my 40s to feel very comfortable with my authority. And I reflect on this. It's like, I do think it's a societal thing. I think that it is certainly a product of our educational system, and many other things. I think intentionally, it is cultivating a culture of people who look outside themselves to know what to do, to look to experts and authorities that are not them, right? Whether it is, I mean, we have experts in every realm, all walks. People pay experts for everything. People won't do things until their doctor tells them to. People won't make choices and instinctively act in certain ways without their lawyer's advice, and on and on and on, right? So I think we all have to work through that to come out the other side and recognize that we are our best authority. Yeah. But what I think has really emerged from that culture is this lack of parental authority too, right? And lack of individual authority in relationships, in marriages. Also, people going to their shrinks, to their, spouses who have problems, they won't talk about their problems without a counselor or a therapist leading them through it, right? This is not the way to go, right? This is false belief. That's a foundation of false belief.
Yes.
So, So, in brief, we've got just a few minutes. Let's discuss what steps we can take to cultivate that for people, for ourselves, for our children. And one last thing, just to give you a little something to think about, is I honestly have learned a great deal about that from you. You're my 6 years younger sister, right? But I grew up being the people pleaser, the parent pleaser. I was the oldest. I didn't take my own risks that I felt worth taking until I was much older than you did when you were taking your risks, I think. I did what I was supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a lot longer. And then you had children before I did. And so I got to look to you as a model because I saw what incredible kids you have. You've done an amazing job. If anyone knows her kids, they would, they're remarkable, extraordinary human beings. And with such a sense of themselves, other people, as they maneuver and navigate through the world. So you've really helped me in that way. So I kind of look to you to impart some words of wisdom, I suppose.
Well, that's very generous in that. I think that there are some things that we all have helped each other, see for sure. And when we were talking about this a little bit previous, I think it came out of a remark when I was reflecting on what essentially I do for my work is really help to teach young people what it means to respect themselves and others. Yeah. Like that's what we touch in upon in relationship. So we can't really have relationship until we learn where one is and where the other is, until we learn how those two spaces can meet and separate in a respectful way. And I mean, that's the work I'm continuing to do in my own life for sure. But in terms of this sort of work, and then that sparked this reflection of something that happened in the playground, because these are social games that I bring to young people. And so in those social spheres, that's where we learn. We learn by messing up. And then we learn by trying it again. We learn that what I said wasn't clear. And so I have to say it again in a more clear way. I don't know if that's bringing a pointed example, but I do also I feel like this is one other part to share with this, is I remember one of my parenting mentors, Misty, because she had a daughter 8 years older than our children. And I remember her saying, don't say no unless you mean it, but say it when you mean it. And I feel like I've seen that in our culture. There's a lot of resistance to using absolutes, no's, this is a boundary you cannot cross. But then when people do use it, they're using it and not backing it up. I see that a lot. Without following through, which makes no mean nothing,
because they actually don't know really what requires the no or doesn't.
Precisely.
And that gets back to, gosh, it makes me even think about that's a whole other discussion too, but in terms of the relationship between men and women, and no means no, and all, no. It's like, no, it's not just language,
Nope.
You have to truly know what feels right and what feels wrong. And when something feels wrong, it's, act upon it. When something feels right, act upon it.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's the recognizing, yes, that the language is like the 10% of our communication. I don't know if there's some study, but everything that's behind it is what people are responding to. Yes. And I think we've talked about that a little bit in different things here. And that's where when we're trying to create rules that are just material,
arbitrary, or just arbitrary,
they they fail. They
Yes.
mean nothing. And so
They-
we now look at where we are. And a lot of it is due to that, I think, you know.
And I'm just sparking right now. I've been sensing this, and this is where I see it. It relates to artifice and pretense.
Yes. Yes.
You have brought this up a couple of times recently. Where what did you say? It's about the image as opposed to the
yes,
substance.
things get caught up into the image rather than the essence so much.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I remember talking about this years and years back when we talked about, you know, different realms that I've lived in, you know, and where the substance, the essence seems to be lost, and people just grab onto the image, the
Yes.
artificial, the material things that represent the image of the essence, and
The trappings. Yes.
the trappings.
Yeah. Yes. So that, and, you know, and we're going to actually wrap it up pretty soon, but basically, you know, it makes me think of just like this. I mean, you know, we're not made up, makeup, all that, right? It's like, I was telling my husband this, that like, as time has gone on in my life, perhaps as I have lived and forged more of myself, I have a harder and harder time, indulging or engaging in anything like that.
Yeah.
It feels so unreal somehow. Putting makeup on even, right? Yeah. So there's that. Same with, I remember years and years and years ago in my 20s, starting to have this sense of people in my adult life, as I was encountering adults, I would recognize that some people seemed, or a lot of people seemed like they were pretending to be grown-ups. They would say things that sounded to me like things they had said, that they've heard, that they think sounds grown up, but I could tell they weren't really grown-ups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all wrapped up in that similar thing of artifice, pretense, and no academic learning, abstract learning versus knowingness, right? So there's so much of that we have to explore in another conversation.
We will. And I have to say one more thing before we close it, because there's something here. I'm going to try to be really brief, but there's something in the image, because I think when you're talking like that of people that you would see that would be acting like they were grown-ups, right? Imitation. Mm-hmm. And so that draws me to the young child. They learn through imitation. We learn through imitation, but it has to then translate. It has to evolve into the being.
Hang on. You're freezing. Oh, okay. Now you're not. It has to evolve.
It has to evolve into the beingness of the essence. But what we're seeing in our culture so much is that it circles and circles and circles around in the image, and it doesn't into the image imitation, rather than it dropping into the essence and then the evolution. So there's something there for us to go more with next time.
Okay, I think you're right.
That has something to do with the inability to step into true authority. Because if you are functioning in this artifice, this image, and you're only in the imitation, which is a process, part of that is necessary, right? I mean, I think of when I've learned to teach, who do I sound like? My teacher, until I've digested and it's become myself, and then I'm me.
Right.
So it's a process.
We model and then learn, right? We model and try things out until we embrace or discard what doesn't work for us, right? But we seem to be caught in this cycle of imitation and pretense and fear.
And the appearance.
The appearance, where the appearance is so important as opposed to the truth and substance.
The substance and truth,
which is messy too. So
but so clean.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
The substance and the truth is clean because everything else falls off of it.
Yeah, I get it.
So let's stop there.
Yeah. This one's a teaser. It's a teaser. So, all right. Well, we'll go from that and talk a little bit about this before we go to our next deeper one following on this. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right.
Be true.
Be true. All right.